Let's start with a couple things you totally already know. Number one, student loan debt is at an all-time high. Tuition costs have quadrupled in the last 30 years, like half of students who go to college graduate with debt, and average debt ranges by state from $18,000 to $40,000. Thanks, Forbes. God, that's depressing. Number two, finding a job after college can be really hard. The commonly cited stat you hear is 3 to 6 months, but that's usually completely ignoring whether or not that job has anything to do with your major. Number three, plenty of people consider college to be a formality. It's a ton of money that you pay to get a piece of paper that opens an otherwise closed door to a decent paying job. And if you're in high school considering a career in music, you've probably entertained the idea that you yourself could be the next Taylor Swift, the next Justin Bieber, the next Billie Eilish. There's no way kids still listen to Bieber, right? And music performance does not have that college degree prerequisite that a lot of other jobs do. So you put all these facts together and the viability of a music degree starts to seem pretty questionable. If you want to perform, why bother with college at all? But maybe your parents are insisting that you get some kind of degree, or maybe your dream is to perform, but you're not super sure how feasible that is and you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. Is it worth majoring in music? The short answer is yes, and there are a ton of people who have tackled this online already, so here's a quick summary of what most people will tell you. So tons of people go to college thinking that they can make a career out of performing. Some of them succeed, a lot of them don't. But that's okay, there are a lot of different ways to make money in the music industry, and there are plenty of ways you can leverage a music degree to do all kinds of other stuff. I'm not directly profiting off of song sales or merch. I don't go on tour, and to be honest, it's been kind of a minute since I've performed anywhere live. But I did major in music business, and I feel like my degree is directly correlated to a lot of the successes I've had in my career. Even if you don't wind up working in music, framing your education around it can help you to stay motivated and find the through line between the things that you care about and the things that you can profit off of. When it was time to figure out how I was going to monetize my degree, what I found most helpful was having conversations with other creatives and hearing stories of how they got to where they were, how they found a spot in the market where they could be useful. All advice is contextual, and your story isn't going to be the same as mine. But hearing how my thought process and priorities evolved throughout my college experience might help you to decide if a music major is right for you. I grew up as the younger of two boys and about as middle class of a family as you're gonna find. My dad was a PE teacher by day, sang in a barbershop quartet for fun, and occasionally he would hop in as the cantor at my parents' church. Some of my earliest memories are from standing up alongside him at like 5, 6 years old, singing together about white Jesus. Hallelujah! And then my second grade teacher said something to my parents about how I had some innate musical talent, so they signed me up for piano lessons the next year. I was never great at it, and I remember not enjoying the practice routine, but it was a great exposure to theory, and it definitely started to help cement music as part of my identity. I sang in choir and performed in musicals in middle and high school, and I picked up guitar as a sophomore in high school. Never took lessons on guitar, but there's a ton of educational content out there, and again, the piano probably helped with theory. So by the time I was looking at colleges, I was mostly thinking about the fact that I liked singing, that I didn't really know how to connect that interest to a revenue stream, that I fantasized a lot about what life would look like as a touring artist, but I wasn't really sure if that was feasible. I had a vague notion that you could do more than just sell your services as a performer with a music degree, and I knew I wasn't interested in music education, at least not formally. So I found myself leaning towards and eventually choosing a music business major. And then about a month before I enrolled, I bought an interface and a mic and started getting into recording music. The goal of mine was to just start publishing finished songs right away. Didn't know anything about marketing, didn't really know anything about recording, but figured I'd pick it up along the way. I think a common misconception a lot of people have about the internet is you can just kind of put stuff on there and the algorithm will do the rest. And then when you have a huge ego about it, like I probably did, you just kind of assume fame and fortune are coming. So my second year of college, when I released an album, didn't do any promotional singles, didn't tell anyone anything about it outside of a Facebook post, I was somehow surprised when no one tuned in. In hindsight, that's okay because the album was really bad. That was kind of a turning point for me. Before the album, music was like a sacred word. Everything that I was doing came back to the question of how my voice could make me more money. After the album, my new sacred word became marketing. I really wish I was drunk. I sang in 2 bands, but the most we ever made in one night was like $350. So entering junior year, I knew that if I still wanted to be a touring artist, I was gonna have to work a lot smarter, a lot harder, and be a lot more patient. By this point, I had also realized that my love for music wasn't just tied to singing and performing. A few years of producing had taught me how much I valued the union of creativity and technology. And I was starting to realize that marketing offered a unique combination of the two. There are a ton of businesses out there, and they all need people to help communicate their message and find an audience. So junior year, I added a digital marketing minor to the roster. I explored copywriting for a while, but as much as I enjoyed writing, I felt like I would be competing for jobs against every English major my year and the 5 years prior. Then the summer before my senior year, I started doing an internship with the Alzheimer's Association. I was asked to do some general communications work, which included some writing, some social media, some graphic design, and video production. I booted up iMovie for the first time, and I was blown away by how much it reminded me of recording software. They both have a timeline, you're selecting and editing clips within that timeline. They both crashed in about 2 seconds on the 2012 MacBook Pro I was still using in 2018, and I was having a really good time. There weren't any video courses at my college, but I stayed in that internship for 6 months and shot some of my first videos ever, interviewing people who were living with or had cared for people who had passed away from Alzheimer's disease. Yikes! Heavy stuff. Made for some really good stories. Another thing that happened my senior year was that a friend of mine from an old job started releasing hip-hop music. He didn't have any producer chops, but he knew enough to buy beats online, stick them in recording software, and sing over them. What he didn't know how to do was add the effects to his voice to make it fit within the mix of the song. In the context of hip-hop music production, that role is called engineering, and knowing that I had a background in music production, he enlisted my help. Over the course of that year, we worked on a few different projects together, and I was making money as a freelancer for the first time. Okay, so cut to the end of my senior year, I was doing video at another internship for another nonprofit. My college had been emphasizing the informational interview, which is basically when you go and you talk to somebody in your potential field and ask them questions about how they do what they do. It's a good way to A, get a sense of whether or not that job is a good fit for you or not, and B, plant your name in that person's head in case there's ever an open position. So I leveraged my professors and set up a few conversations with people working in the entertainment and advertising industries. I talked with creative directors, social media managers, video producers, and they all generally gave me the advice that I should think about starting my own business. The idea appealed to me, but I figured I'd need a few years of full-time experience before I had the connections or experience needed to make that happen. But after I graduated, I applied to a ton of marketing jobs. I pretty much would have taken any kind of creative work, but after 6 months of searching, I was feeling incredibly burnt out. So I went through a temp agency and took an administrative office position so that I could move out of my parents' house. 3 months later, COVID came to the US, and marketing jobs pretty much dried up everywhere. A full-time job I actually enjoyed seemed farther away than ever. Interestingly though, that freelance engineering work I did led to a few paid music videos with the same client. Then I did a house tour video for the artist's dad because he was looking to move. Then one of the videographers I talked to a few months back asked me to hop on a project. Then I was referred to a classical music organization that needed somebody to record the video at their concerts. The price ceiling on vocal engineering had kind of been reached, but I was suddenly able to charge a whole lot more for video services. Cameras cost a lot. Looking for work costs a lot. That was reflected in my pricing, and I started to finally make some real money. I remember the first time that I landed a $500 gig, I was blown away that someone was willing to pay me that much. And it dawned on me that this could work. I took all the money I made from freelancing and reinvested it right back into better cameras, better lenses, lights, and accessories. I used Instagram and word of mouth to keep networking with other videographers and musicians. Bands from the college I went to asked for me to shoot their music videos. Then total strangers started approaching me and asked to do the same thing. It took longer than I'd hoped, but by the end of 2021, I was making enough money that I could justify leaving my full-time job. And once you have those extra 40 hours a week, things really start to get going. Since the start of 2022, I've been fully self-employed, making content for musicians and for businesses. So how much of my major impacted where I am now? Couple things. Majoring in music put me in close proximity to other musicians who I was then later able to sell services to. It also made me seem qualified enough to my former coworker that he started paying me for engineering work, and I don't think I would have considered freelancing as a viable option otherwise. Once I started networking, music as a topic was a great way to break the ice. I'm a huge introvert, and talking to adults about real life is scary, and music was a great bridge for relatability. A lot of people I talked to seem to take a liking to me, and I feel like a big part of why is the fact that I ask good good questions, and I share what I care about. Taking an interest in music production also helped ease me into working with creative software and made video editing seem much more approachable. To this day, video production for music clients still makes up a ton of my work, and I can talk the talk with them because of my degree. Now, is video production a good fit for all music majors? No. Marketing isn't the right move for everyone, but I never would have thought about marketing or video as a college major when I was in high school. Let's say you're adamant that you want a career as a performing musician, but you've heard a million people say a million times, "There's no way to make money doing that." Well, here's my reality check for you. Tons of people spend their whole careers performing. Some perform for a while and then teach. Some perform and teach at the same time. But let's look at this from the perspective of supply and demand. In this case, supply is the number of gigs, the amount of money there is to be made in the music industry, and demand is the millions of people who want to be singers. The unfortunate truth is, in this case, demand will always greatly exceed supply. But musicians across history have moonlighted. If your goal is to be a commercial artist, my advice to you is go get the degree, take an administrative job that pays the bills, and focus all of your energy on growing your online presence. The more followers you have, the more people who listen to your music before you take it to a label. If you want to do that, the more negotiating power you'll have once you get to the table. On the other hand, I know plenty of students who got music placements within a year after graduating. A friend of mine who's a drummer landed a gig on a cruise ship, and he got to spend his early 20s traveling the world. Another friend spent a couple years working at a music retailer, and now he owns his own recording studio. Tons of my music education friends got teaching jobs within the first year, and a bunch of my music therapy friends also were placed. Couple miscellaneous thoughts, and then I'll get out of your hair. Number one, here's a list of the music-related courses that I took in college. Do I use the skills from these classes today? No, not directly. These business-related courses are super relevant, but professors who taught classes in both of these columns introduced me to their friends and colleagues and helped me network. Number two, if you're in a band and you're thinking about making a career out of it, meet with your college advisors before you decide on a major. Ask them for advice and ask them what resources the college has that can help you. There might be great perks like 24/7 access to a recording studio or industry connections. They also might not have a ton to offer. And number three, a music major is probably a better option if you'd otherwise go in undeclared. I say this because at least the music major will put you in immediate contact with people with similar interests, and it's a good way to find out quickly whether or not you're on the right track. So you still want to major in music? Go for it. Find a damn good college with a damn good program and make the most of it. If you get a year or two in and you realize, you know what, the risk might not be worth the reward, that's okay, and you haven't wasted your time. You can still do so much with your degree and as a musician, even if the music doesn't correlate to your paycheck. Thanks for watching. I hope hearing my story helps you to write your own. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe if you want to hear me ramble about other stuff. Okay, bye. It also made me seem qualified enough to my former coworker that he started paying me to do engineering work, and I don't think I would have careered. You're fucking it all up, Sean! Fuck! Ah! Ah!